Good evening, and welcome back to Appalachian Screams. Tonight, the highways are empty, the gas stations hum too quietly, and something's been following travelers past the state lines. We're diving into 10 true terrifying November road trip encounters. Tales of drivers who vanished between exits, and voices that whisper through static. So buckle up, keep your headlights steady, and if you're brave enough, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. The mountains, the plains, or the dark road ahead. Now, let's begin. The first flakes of November frost still clung to the grass when I left campus that morning. It was supposed to be an easy drive home. 5 hours, give or take. I'd done it a dozen times. But this year, I wanted to skip the clogged interstate and see some of the countryside before everything turned gray. The GPS suggested a scenic route. Fewer lights, fewer towns, shorter by 20 minutes. It sounded good enough. The road wound through hills that looked half asleep, bare trees stretching their arms across the asphalt. Every few miles I passed a farmhouse or a rusted mailbox leaning into the wind. It felt lonely in the kind of way that's almost peaceful. The sun was already dipping low when I saw the first valley, an old fruit stand boarded up beside a billboard for a local church. The preacher's face smiled down from it, frozen in permanent kindness. Beneath it, a gravel turnout dipped toward a patch of birch trees. A blue tarp was tangled in their branches like a flag caught mid-wave. I remember thinking it looked familiar, though I'd never been there before. That was the first loop. I didn't realize it until later. About 15 minutes later, the same billboard appeared again. Same dented mailbox, same blue tarp. I stared at it, trying to find a difference. Maybe it was a chain of old stands that all used the same ad. But even the cracked letters on the sign, fresh peaches, July only, were identical. A chill crept through the vents. The air smelled faintly sweet, like coolant or spoiled fruit. I turned the fan off, but the smell lingered. I laughed under my breath and checked the GPS. The map showed nothing but green and gray. No road name, no mile markers. Just a pulsing blue arrow gliding across nowhere. Then the radio hiccuped. Static swallowed the music, then spat it back out. The same verse replaying twice. I smacked the dash. It kept going, the singer's voice looping in a lazy spiral. When I reached the third valley, my stomach turned. I slowed to a crawl. The fruit stand sagged in the same way. The same boards nailed in the same crooked pattern. The blue tarp rippled once, like something beneath it shifted. I rolled my window down an inch, half expecting to hear wind or an animal. Nothing. Just silence heavy enough to ring in my ears. I pulled over at the turnout, heart hammering. The sky had gone colorless, just pale ash stretching from tree line to tree line. My breath fogged the windshield. I stepped out to clear my head. The air was colder than it should have been. The frost on the grass glittered like broken glass. Standing there, I could see my tire tracks fading into the valley behind me. Only 4 impressions, 2 from when I arrived, 2 when I left. Not 6, not 8, 4. I climbed back in the car, telling myself it was fine, just an illusion. My reflection in the rear view looked too still, too calm. I turned the key and kept driving. 5 minutes later, headlights bloomed up ahead. Small, red, steady. Relief washed over me. Another car meant civilization, right? I sped up until I could make out its shape. Compact sedan, dark color, same model as mine. I noticed the cracked taillight. The same dent near the bumper where I'd clipped a shopping cart last semester. I blinked hard. The license plate was my plate. The car ahead braked gently. My own reflection flickered in its rear window. For one impossible second, I thought I saw myself behind the wheel, staring into the mirror, right at me. I swerved to the shoulder, shaking. The taillights slowed too, perfectly in sync, as if waiting for me to move again. The smell from the vents thickened, syrupy and wrong. That's when the radio whispered a sound, like breathing, right beside my ear. I hit the gas, praying the next turn would break the pattern. It didn't. When the road straightened, the same valley waited ahead, unchanged, patient, and ready for me to pass through it again. I stopped keeping track of time once the sky went flat and silver. The sun didn't seem to move anymore. It just hovered somewhere behind the clouds. My phone said 4:32 p.m. no matter how many times I checked. The clock in the dash was stuck there too. The radio looped the same guitar riff over and over. I turned it off, but the faint hum of the melody lingered beneath the silence. The heater's breath filled the car with that same sweet rot. It clung to my tongue like sugar gone bad. I tried to think logically. Maybe I'd missed a turn, or my GPS had glitched, rerouting me in circles. I slowed down and checked the map again. The blue arrow wasn't moving. It just pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. That was when I saw the fog, thick bands of it unrolling down the slope ahead. It wasn't drifting or swirling. It was spreading, inching across the road like something alive. My headlights cut short into it, swallowed after a few feet. I drove slower, gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. Shapes flickered in the mist, trees bending in impossible ways, shadows moving like underwater currents. I tried to tell myself it was the light, but I didn't believe it. The smell got worse the deeper I went, like antifreeze mixed with fruit and metal. I cracked the window for air, and that's when I heard the whisper. It wasn't through the radio this time. It came from outside, low and rhythmic, almost like breathing. I froze. The sound circled the car, sliding from one side to the other. The fog pressed against the glass like a living wall. For a moment, I thought I saw a handprint smear against my window, 5 long streaks of condensation, dragging slowly downward. I floored it. The tires screeched on the frost, and the world outside became a blur of white. The engine roared higher than it should have. The fog thinned, and then the fruit stand appeared again, dead ahead. I slammed the brakes. The car fishtailed before coming to rest right in front of the billboard. The smiling preacher's eyes seemed wider now, the paint warped and wet. That's when the lights appeared behind me. 2 red dots, glowing steady through the fog. I thought it was another driver, someone who'd gotten stuck in this loop with me. I opened my door and stepped out, waving. "Hey!" My voice cracked, carried nowhere. The lights didn't move. They just hovered, idling in the mist. I stepped closer. My shoes crunched on frozen gravel. The air was so cold, it burned my teeth when I breathed. Then the lights blinked, once, and I realized they weren't behind me. They were in my mirror. The reflection showed my car idling in the fog, with me still sitting inside, hands on the wheel, eyes forward. I stumbled back, slamming into the door. The version of me in the mirror turned its head, just a little. Enough for me to see a grin I didn't recognize. I jumped in and hit the gas again, my heart pounding so hard I could taste it. The tires spun, then caught. The road stretched forward in a straight black ribbon. No fog, no billboard. For a few minutes, I thought I'd escaped. The smell faded. The static died. The GPS started blinking again, trying to reroute. Then the road curved left, and the valley opened below. The fruit stand, the tarp, the sign, waiting like an old friend. I screamed at the windshield, slamming the wheel with my fist. The car jolted but kept rolling. The same chorus faded back through the speakers like it had been waiting for its cue. I didn't bother checking the time. I already knew what it would say. 4:32 p.m. When I looked in the rearview mirror, the fog hadn't followed me, but someone was sitting in my back seat, smiling through the frost. I didn't turn around right away. I couldn't. The air inside the car felt heavy, like the atmosphere had thickened. My breath fogged in front of me even though the heater still wheezed. The rearview mirror quivered with each bump of the road, and through the haze, a shape shifted in the back seat. My mouth went dry. I whispered, "Get out," but the words barely made a sound. The figure didn't move. Its head tilted, slowly, unnaturally, like a marionette learning how to bend. The frost on the glass beside it pulsed with every breath it took, each exhale leaving a handprint that melted into a dripping smear. I didn't wait for another movement. I slammed the brakes. The car fishtailed and died halfway across the lane. When I finally turned, the back seat was empty, except for my backpack. I hadn't brought it in, so I'd left it zipped in the trunk. The zipper was open now, teeth gaping like a grin. My spare sweatshirt and charger cables were scattered across the seat, and wedged between them, damp and crumpled, was a folded paper map. The kind no one uses anymore. The highway numbers were wrong, drawn in pen, looping into the same circle over and over until the ink bled through. At the center was a word written in shaky letters, home. My hands shook as I touched it. The paper was cold, almost wet. I shoved it into the glove box and started the engine again. The car hesitated, coughing once before roaring to life. The fog thinned, and the radio flicked on by itself. A voice hummed beneath the static, low, steady, almost comforting. I knew that tune. It was me. I'd hummed it hours ago, back at the rest stop before I took this road. I turned the dial, but it only got louder, filling the car like pressure. Every mile felt longer than the one before it. The valley came again, but this time the billboard was blank. The fruit stand collapsed, and the birch trees leaned toward the road like curious skeletons. The tarp was gone. Something glinted in the frost where it had been. I slowed down, squinting through the glare. It was a set of keys. My keys. The spare set I kept in my desk drawer at school, still on the cheap plastic tag from the campus store. That's when it hit me. I hadn't been driving forward. The world had been reassembling itself around me. Each loop a little less alive, each turn more empty. The heater blew one final breath before it died completely. The temperature plummeted. Frost crawled along the inside of the windshield, tracing patterns like veins. My reflection stared back at me in the ice, pale and unfamiliar. When it blinked, I didn't. I whispered to it, "What do you want?" It smiled. Then, in the reflection, its hand lifted to the steering wheel. Mine didn't. The car lurched forward. I didn't touch the pedals. The radio hissed louder, the voice beneath it whispering that same word, over and over, in rhythm with the tires grinding against the road. Home, home, home. I tried to pull the key, but it was fused in place. The steering wheel moved on its own. My arms were locked at my sides. The fog outside gathered again, thicker, closing in like water around a sinking ship. The odometer reset to 0. The road flattened. The world dimmed to gray. I couldn't feel the seat beneath me anymore, just the vibration of the engine humming through my bones. When the fog finally parted, the fruit stand was gone. The valley was gone. There was only asphalt stretching into a colorless horizon, my own red taillights vanishing somewhere far ahead. I blinked, and the lights blinked back. The radio cracked once, then went silent. The car kept driving. If you ever take the back road near mile marker 23, check your rearview mirror when the clock hits 4:32. If you see my taillights, don't follow. The motel sits off Route 68, halfway between nowhere and the next nowhere. 20 rooms, a dying ice machine, and a neon sign that buzzes louder than it glows. I work the night desk because I can't sleep anyway. Graveyard shift suits people like me. Quiet, invisible, half awake. That Friday started like any other. November air leaking through the cracked door, stale coffee burning in the pot, and the usual smell of detergent mixed with mildew. The place was empty except for 2 truckers in 104 and a retired couple who always asked for extra towels. At 11:47 p.m., I checked the logbook, ran the totals, and started the routine head count through the security cams. All normal. Until room 117. There is no room 117. The building stops at 116. Always has. But the system showed a keycard issued under that number. The name on the screen was R. or Calden. No reservation, no payment, no record. I figured it was a glitch. The motel software runs on something older than I am. I cleared the cache, restarted the terminal. Still there. The status line read, checked in, 11:32 p.m. I called out to the cleaning closet radio for Kevin, the night porter. He didn't answer. Probably out back smoking again. The clock ticked over to midnight. The sign outside gave its usual flicker. Then the phone rang. Front desk, I said. A man's voice, calm and a little off, like he was talking through water. Can I get more towels to 117? I froze. Sir, we don't... Click. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver for a good 10 seconds before setting it down. There was a part of me that wanted to call it a prank, but pranks don't come with system logs and timestamps. I checked the surveillance monitors again. The bottom row shows the exterior hallways. Each room has its own camera above the door. The feed between 116 and the vending machine blinked black for half a second. When it came back, the timestamp had skipped ahead 3 minutes. And in that missing stretch, the counter for room 117 changed from occupied, 0 to occupied. 1. I grabbed the master key ring from behind the counter. My breath came out in small clouds as I walked the hall. The heat always dies out there at night. The vending light buzzed overhead, flickering with that migraine strobe. The plaque for 116 gleamed faintly under the bulb. After that, blank wall, no door, no 117. I stood there longer than I'd like to admit. The wallpaper rippled slightly, like a curtain breathing. I stepped closer, pressing my ear to it. Faint static, maybe from a radio. Then something else. Water. Running water. Like a shower. I took a step back. The noise cut instantly, like it knew I'd heard it. I walked the rest of the hall, pretending I was just checking lights, locks, anything to keep my hands busy. When I got back to the desk, the phone rang again. Same line, same tone. "Can I get those towels?" I hung up. This time, the connection didn't break cleanly. There was a faint whisper on the line that dragged a half-second too long, like someone exhaling beside my ear. When I looked at the guest ledger again, room 117's checkout time had updated itself. Scheduled 7:00 a.m. I didn't add that. At 12:41 a.m., the lobby door sensor beeped, and a wet footprint appeared on the tile, facing away from the exit. By 1 in the morning, the halls had gone completely silent. The kind of quiet that feels alive, too thick to breathe through. I kept glancing at the camera feed for that dead-end corridor, waiting for static or motion blur. The screen stayed clean, but the light over the vending machine flickered, a slow, rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat. Then came the smell. Wet tile, bleach, rust. I followed it to the laundry room, thinking maybe Kevin had spilled something again. The washing machines were all empty, but the floor was damp, and someone had left a folded towel on the table. The motel name was embroidered wrong, Dreamer's Inn instead of Dreamer Inn. We'd never used towels like that. I brought it back to the desk, just staring at the stitching. The fabric was clammy, as if it had been soaked and dried halfway. I laid it under the counter and checked the guest list again. Room 117 was still active. Status, do not disturb. I tried to delete it. The system refused. Instead, it added a new note line automatically. Maintenance requested. 01:08 a.m. No one had touched the terminal but me. The wind picked up outside, rattling the office windows. The no vacancy sign buzzed so hard it stuttered between red and darkness. That was when I saw it. Movement in the lobby reflection. A figure crossing the far end of the hall. Pale, barefoot, heading toward the vending machine. I leaned closer to the monitor. The hallway camera was on a 3-second delay, but I could still catch a blur of motion near the vending light. The angle cut off just where 117 would have been. My headset crackled. It shouldn't have. Only Kevin and I share the radio line. "Front desk, this is 117. The water's still running." The voice was slow and muffled, as if half drowned. My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" I asked. "The drain won't close." Then static swallowed it whole. I ripped the earpiece off. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my jaw. I grabbed the flashlight and master keys again, forcing my legs to move. The hall seemed longer this time. The hum of the vending machine vibrated through the walls. When I reached the blank stretch where the door should have been, condensation slicked the wallpaper. My beam caught something on the surface. Small numbers scratched into the paint. 117. The digits were dripping, not painted. Leaking. A drop fell onto my wrist, cold and sticky. I aimed the light upward. Water was seeping from the ceiling, leaving brown trails down the plaster. I followed the trickle to the floor, where it pooled around my shoes. It smelled faintly like hotel soap. From inside the wall came a dull thud. Then another. Soft, rhythmic, like a palm hitting porcelain. "Kevin?" My voice cracked. I knew it wasn't him. The knocking stopped. A low hum started instead. A tune. Familiar. The same tune the radio plays when the power flickers. When I stepped back, the light over the vending machine flared, blinding white. And for half a second, The outline of a door shimmered where 117 should be. Old brass knob, frame swollen with damp. I blinked and it was gone. I ran back to the lobby. My wet footprints gleamed on the tile, leading straight to the desk. The towel I'd left folded was gone. In its place sat a key, an actual brass key stamped 117. I checked the clock. 1:17 a.m. From the hall speaker came a soft chime, the automated morning wake-up call, followed by a calm, wet voice whispering, "Thank you for your stay." By the time the clock hit 2:00 a.m., I'd stopped trying to explain anything. The system log still listed room 117 as occupied, "Do not disturb." The brass key sat beside the monitor, leaving a faint, wet ring on the counter. I wrapped it in a rag, but the fabric kept soaking through, like it was sweating. The storm outside had worsened. Rain drummed on the lobby roof hard enough to drown out the hum of the vending machine camera. Every few minutes, the power flickered. The generator in back took over with its familiar hiccup, a sound I'd heard 100 times before, except now it had a pulse to it, almost like breathing. I couldn't take it anymore. I left the desk, flashlight trembling in my hand, and walked the hall one last time. The lights buzzed overhead. The air reeked of wet drywall. When I reached the end, there it was, the door. Room 117 stood solid and real, painted the same sickly cream as every other door. Brass number, tarnished knob, faint dripping from the frame. I stared at it until my eyes watered. It shouldn't exist, but it did. The knob turned easily. Inside, the air was heavy and wet, thick with the smell of bleach and mold. Wallpaper peeled from the corners in long curls, and water seeped from somewhere unseen, trickling down the walls into the carpet. A lamp on the nightstand flickered, its bulb half submerged in a glass of water that shouldn't have been there. The bathroom door was open a few inches. Light spilled through the crack. Not steady, but pulsing like it came from underwater. I stepped closer. My shoes squished. The carpet sucked at them like mud. Every breath felt stolen. "Housekeeping," I said, out of habit. The word didn't even sound like mine. Something moved behind the bathroom door. Slow, careful. I reached out, nudged it open with 2 fingers. The hinge groaned. Inside, the tub was full, not with water, but with something thicker, the color of cloudy tea. Ripples spread across the surface. A man sat slumped against the tiles, head tilted sideways, one arm hanging over the rim. His skin was pale and soft-looking, bloated from the water. The face turned toward me. It was me. Same uniform, same key ring, same name tag reflecting the light in quick flashes. His mouth opened, but the sound that came out wasn't breath. It was the recorded chime from the morning wake-up call. Checkout time, 7 a.m. My flashlight hit the floor. The bulb burst in the puddle with a sharp hiss. I stumbled backward, hitting the doorframe. The wet version of me blinked once, slow, and raised one finger. Water gurgled from his throat. He pointed toward the counter. On it, an old paper ledger sat open, soaked through. I hadn't seen one like it in years. I stepped closer, drawn to it. The ink had bled across the page, but I could still make out the names. R. Calden. Below it, freshly written, the next entry, E. Barlow. Check-in, 11:32 p.m. That's my name. The room went dark. The air pulled tight around me, pressure building behind my ears. From the tub came a long, rising sound. Not quite a scream, not quite a laugh. Then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was standing behind the front desk again. The storm had stopped. The floor was dry. The cameras were clear. Room 117 wasn't on the screen anymore, but there was a faint dripping sound somewhere just behind the wall. I looked down. The brass key to 117 was back on the counter. Polished, clean, dry. I picked it up, turning it in the light. My reflection in its surface smiled back at me, lips moving a split second after mine. The phone rang once. I answered automatically. "Front desk." A voice just like mine said, "Can I get more towels to 117? If you ever stop at a roadside motel and the clerk refuses to give you a certain room number, don't ask why. They're probably just trying to forget they already did." It happened just past the border between Illinois and Missouri, on a 2-lane road the map called County 14. The kind of route people only take if they hate interstates. The air smelled like wet leaves and diesel, and the world was turning that heavy November gray that tells you snow isn't far off. I'd been driving since sunrise, trying to make it home before nightfall, when the steering started to thump. Not a full flat, just a low, rhythmic wobble that shook through the wheel. I pulled into the next town, if you can call it that. A gas station, a diner with a handwritten "Open Sometimes" sign, and a garage with faded letters spelling Wilkes Auto and Tire. The bell over the garage door gave a tired ring when I stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of rubber and old oil. A man in a greasy jumpsuit sat at a counter, reading a newspaper that looked older than I was. His hair was thin and gray, and he had that hollow, sleepless look of someone who's been awake too long. "Got a slow leak," I told him, tapping the key ring against my palm. He didn't look up. "Front driver's side?" That stopped me. "Yeah. How'd you know?" He turned a page, the paper crackling. "You tracked a wet line across the lot." I tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "Guess it's pretty obvious." He finally stood, grabbing a wrench and motioning for me to pull around back. His name patch was torn, only the letters "Will" still hanging on. The garage was dim, the kind of light that never feels warm. Tools lay in neat, obsessive lines. Everything smelled faintly metallic, like pennies and rain. He jacked the car, spun the wheel once, and frowned. "You been driving through County 14 long?" "Just passed through," I said. "Why?" He didn't answer, just crouched lower, squinting at the tread. "You hit something," he muttered. "Not glass, not metal, something soft." That made no sense, but I let it go. Travelers learn not to ask too much in small towns. While he worked, I wandered the edge of the shop. The walls were lined with photos, black and white shots of wrecked cars and smiling families holding trophies. In every one, the same man stood in the background, younger but unmistakable, the mechanic. "Family business?" I asked. He paused. His hands froze mid-turn on the lug wrench. "Used to be." A gust of wind made the garage door shudder. He straightened up slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "Tires patched. Won't cost you nothing." That threw me. "You sure?" "Can't charge for what's already paid for." Before I could ask what he meant, he rolled the tire toward me. The patch gleamed fresh, a perfect circle, but the rubber around it looked wrong, rippled, almost bruised. I reached out to touch it. It was warm. He stopped me with a quiet, "Don't." Then he finally looked up, just for a second, and I wished he hadn't. His eyes were bloodshot, but not from fatigue. The pupils were dilated wide, swallowing the color. "County 14 takes things," he said softly. "Sometimes it puts them back wrong." The words hung between us. The wind outside carried a faint, sweet smell, like fruit rotting under frost. I thanked him, paid anyway, and got back in my car. The steering felt normal again. The town slipped away in my mirrors within minutes. But a mile down the road, something shifted in the trunk. A dull, heavy thump, like something rolling. I told myself it was just the spare. Until I remembered. The mechanic hadn't put the old tire back there. When I stopped to check, the trunk was empty except for a wet handprint pressed into the carpet, one that wasn't mine. I should have turned around. I should have gone back to the garage, asked him what he meant, anything. But instead, I just drove faster. The road stretched flat and endless, every field a sheet of dead grass glittering with frost. My headlights cut through a low haze, and the sky had gone purple at the edges. The thumping came again, softer this time, but steady. I told myself it was the jack or a loose bottle rolling around. When I finally pulled over, I left the engine idling and popped the trunk. Empty. The carpet was damp where the handprint had been, but now it was gone. Only a faint indentation remained, as if something had pressed there and lifted away. I ran my fingers over it, cold and sticky, like tree sap. The smell that came off it made my stomach twist. Sweet, metallic. I slammed the trunk and turned to get back in. That's when I saw the footprints. They led away from the car, into the ditch. Just a few steps, bare and clean, each one pressed deep into the frost. No tracks leading back. I told myself someone was messing with me, that I was overtired, that maybe I'd left the garage with something already wrong in my head. But then I saw the tire. The patch, the one the mechanic had made, was pulsing. Slow, faint, like a heartbeat under the rubber. I crouched down, hand shaking, and felt the air around it. Warm, even though my breath was fogging in front of me. I got back in the car, locked the doors, and drove. After another 15 miles, the low fuel light came on. There hadn't been a gas station since Wilkes Auto. My GPS had been frozen since I'd left town, showing the same looping line of County 14. No cell service, just static. I spotted headlights ahead, a pickup coming from the opposite direction. I honked and waved, desperate to flag it down. The truck slowed, then pulled beside me. An older man rolled down his window halfway, the air between us sharp and freezing. "Breakdown?" he asked. "Running low on gas. You know where the nearest station is?" He frowned. "Only one open this late is back in Fairview. You passed it 20 miles ago." I didn't see any signs. "Wasn't one to see," he said flatly. "Not since they tore that place down years ago." I stared at him. "The mechanic there fixed my tire less than an hour ago." He didn't blink. "Wilkes?" "Yeah." The man's face went pale, eyes flicking toward the road behind me. "That garage burned down in '98, he said quietly. "Took old Will with it. They say he never left." I laughed, too loud, too sudden. "I'm telling you, I talked to him." He looked past me, into my car. His expression changed. "Kid, your back seat's wet." I turned. The upholstery glistened faintly under the dome light, soaked through as if someone had just climbed out of a lake. The sweet, metallic smell filled the cabin again. The man's truck peeled away before I could say another word. The heater started blowing cold air. My windshield fogged from the inside. On the glass, letters appeared, traced by an unseen finger, dripping condensation as they formed. "Thank you." I swiped at it, heart racing. Beneath the smear, faint shapes pressed outward from the seat fabric. The outlines of fingers, a hand pushing up. I hit the gas, tearing down County 14 until the road blurred. When I finally glanced in the mirror, the headlights behind me were gone. But in their place, reflected in the glass, a pale shape was sitting where the back seat had been wet. Head tilted, eyes black and hollow. By the time I realized the face in the mirror wasn't mine anymore, the road signs had all started pointing back toward Fairview. By the time dawn should have been coming, the sky was still black. My dashboard clock blinked 4:32 over and over, frozen. The road beneath me felt softer somehow, like driving over a living thing that didn't want me there. Every time I looked in the mirror, that pale shape behind me shifted, closer, clearer, more familiar. The heater wouldn't shut off, blowing lukewarm air that smelled like antifreeze and decay. I tried the radio just to hear something, but all I got was static threaded with a low hum, like someone breathing through water. The car slowed on its own. I pressed the gas, but the pedal felt stiff. The headlights flickered, catching on a sign half sunk in the weeds. Fairview, 2 miles. I thought if I could just make it back to that town, back to the garage, maybe I'd understand what was happening. The road narrowed into cracked asphalt and patchy dirt, the same stretch I'd driven before. The same dead trees, the same shape of the land, even the same blue tarp caught in the fence. Except now the garage wasn't dark. The lights were on. I pulled in, gravel crunching under the tires. Steam hissed from under the hood. The Wilkes Auto and Tire sign was glowing faintly, edges warped from heat. The building looked exactly as it had hours ago. No ash, no damage, just the smell of burnt wood hiding beneath the motor oil. The office door creaked open before I touched it. Inside, the radio played softly. A man's voice hummed along, slightly off-key. "Back already," he said without turning. "They always come back." It was him, the mechanic. Same gray jumpsuit, same torn name patch. Only now his hands were blackened to the wrists, like he'd been working inside a furnace. "What did you do to my car?" I said. My voice cracked. He didn't answer right away, just wiped his hands on the same stained rag, over and over. "I fixed what the road took. I didn't ask for that." He looked up. His eyes were wrong again, too wide, irises stretched thin and watery. "You think it only takes rubber and steel? County 14's hungry. It always has been. You left something behind." I backed toward the door. "You're insane." He smiled faintly. "And you brought it back." Something banged against my car outside. A heavy, wet sound. I turned toward the noise. The back door of the car hung open. Steam poured out, curling in the cold air. The mechanic stayed where he was, watching me. "Don't open the trunk," he said quietly. "If you do, it finishes what it started." But I couldn't stop myself. The trunk lid lifted easily, almost inviting. Inside, the spare tire sat upright, glistening with condensation. The patched section was pulsing again, faster this time. The sound came from within it, a soft, irregular rhythm. A heartbeat. The rubber split. A hand, pale, dripping, impossibly human, pressed through from the inside, fingers clawing at the air. I stumbled back, falling to the gravel. The mechanic didn't move. His eyes glistened, like he'd seen this 1,000 times. "Told you," he murmured. "It puts things back wrong." The hand groped the edge of the trunk, pulling a shoulder through. The face that followed was my own. Gray-skinned, soaked, mouth twitching like it was learning how to smile. It looked straight at me. Then it whispered, "You left me on the road." I ran. I don't remember how far, just that when I turned, the garage wasn't there anymore. Only a burned-out foundation, overgrown with weeds. My car sat in the center, melted down to rust. They found me walking the shoulder of County 14 at sunrise, barefoot, muttering about a flat tire. They said the road's been closed since '98, washed out after a tanker fire. Sometimes I still wake up to that slow, steady thump outside my window, like a tire rolling, still looking for the rest of me. I was halfway through a cross-country drive, somewhere in the Rockies, when I decided to sleep at a scenic overlook off Route 82. The sun had dropped behind the mountains, and I was too cheap for another motel. The sign said Summit Point, 9,100 feet. I figured I'd have a decent view in the morning. The overlook was empty except for a single trash bin and a weathered bench. No cell service. The air smelled like pine and exhaust, thin and cold. I parked facing the guardrail so the windshield looked out over the valley, miles of black forest fading into mist. I cracked the windows, killed the engine, and lay across the back seat. The quiet out there wasn't peaceful. It was dense. I could hear the hum of my own pulse in the silence. A few minutes later, the car ticked as it cooled. Then came a sound that didn't belong. A faint tap, tap, tap on the passenger window. I sat up fast, heart pounding. Nothing outside but my reflection and the faint shimmer of moonlight on frost. I told myself it was tree debris or ice forming. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling someone was standing just out of view behind the car. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it through the back window. The beam caught nothing but fog. When I checked my phone, the time read 11:42 p.m., battery at 19%. I sent a text to my sister. Crashing at a lookout. No signal, but I'm fine. It didn't send. I turned off the flashlight, tried to sleep again. Then came another sound, softer this time. Breathing. Slow, steady, just outside my door. I froze. The windows were fogging from the inside. I wiped a patch clear and squinted through. The glass cleared, but fog gathered again immediately from outside. Something was exhaling against the window. I hit the horn. The sound cracked the silence like a gunshot. The fog vanished instantly, retreating from the glass in a spiral. I jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine. Headlights spilled across the guardrail, and for half a second, I saw it. A figure crouched beside the trash bin, naked and colorless, face pressed to its knees. When the lights hit, it snapped its head up. The eyes glowed pale white, not reflecting, glowing. I threw the car in reverse, tires skidding on gravel. The figure didn't move, just watched, jaw slowly unhinging until its mouth hung wide open. I turned the wheel, gunned it toward the exit, and the radio flicked on by itself. No static, no station, just a whisper. Don't go yet. You haven't seen it. I slammed the knob off, heart hammering, but the voice kept going, right through the air vents, faint, breathy. Look closer. The headlights flickered once. Then everything went black. I slammed the brakes. Silence swallowed everything. The air felt thick, vibrating against my skin. For a second, I thought I'd passed out, until I realized the valley outside the windshield wasn't dark anymore. It was glowing. Every tree, every ridge, every shadow below pulsed with a faint silver light. I couldn't tell where the light came from, only that it wasn't natural, and it was moving upward, toward me. The glass fogged again, but this time the words traced backward on the windshield, letters forming slowly in the condensation. Stay and see. When I looked up from the words, something was standing on the guardrail, staring in, smiling with my face. The glowing valley didn't fade. It breathed. Each ridge flared and dimmed in rhythm, as if the whole landscape was alive and exhaling light. I should have driven off right then, but the air outside shimmered through the windshield like heat over asphalt, and for some reason I couldn't move. The radio clicked on again. No voice this time, just the sound of wind roaring through a tunnel. The headlights flickered once and held steady, cutting a pale path down toward the forest below. Except the road didn't exist. It was just the drop-off and the valley, yet the light stretched forward like it had found a surface. Something was reflecting it. I rolled the window down an inch. The night hissed back. Beneath the wind, I heard it. The faint scrape of gravel. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling the car. My hand went for the ignition key, but the metal was hot. Too hot to touch. The footsteps stopped. Then, on the driver's side glass, a fogged circle bloomed from the outside. Inside the ring, a fingertip traced a line downward, deliberate and slow. Another line beside it. Then 3 more. 5 marks. I switched the wipers on by reflex. They dragged once, smearing the condensation, and then froze mid-stroke. Something held them there, the motor whining uselessly. The valley's light dimmed. The forest shapes below started to shift, like shadows changing places. One ridge seemed to rise higher, a darker wave among the glowing ones. My chest tightened. It wasn't terrain. It was something climbing. Branches cracked somewhere down the slope. I threw the car into reverse, tires spitting gravel. The headlights caught movement on the guardrail. A shape crouched there. The same pale figure I'd seen earlier. Only now there were more of them. Dozens. Each one perched along the railing, faces turned upward, mouths hanging open as if tasting the air. I slammed the accelerator. The car lurched backward, fishtailed, and stopped dead. The engine was still running, but the wheels wouldn't turn. The dashboard lights blinked nonsense symbols, every warning light flashing at once. I heard whispering outside. Not words, more like breathy syllables that rose and fell together. The glass began to fog again from both sides, letters crawling backward across it. Stay. I shoved the shifter into drive. The tires squealed. The car lurched forward a few feet, then stopped again. One of the pale figures dropped from the guardrail and landed in front of the hood. The impact didn't make a sound. It just straightened up slowly, head tilting as if curious. It had my jacket on. I couldn't breathe. My backpack was still on the passenger seat, zipped open, and my jacket was inside it. The figure smiled, a small, stiff motion, like muscles remembering how. It stepped closer. The headlights flickered across its face. My own eyes stared back. That broke whatever trance I was in. I leaned on the horn, hard. The blast echoed down the valley, shaking frost from the trees. Every figure on the rail turned its head in unison toward the noise. Then, as suddenly as they'd appeared, they leapt straight down into the glowing valley, vanishing into the light. Silence returned. The engine finally responded, tires spinning free. I didn't care which direction I was facing. I just drove. After half a mile, the glow faded from the rearview mirror, but the fog didn't. It clung to the car, rolling in sheets across the hood. When I stopped to catch my breath, the radio hissed once and a faint voice whispered from the static. My own voice, hoarse and distant. "You left them behind." When I looked in the mirror, my reflection was still turned toward the valley, smiling, long after I'd driven away. I drove blind through that fog until the road disappeared. No stars, no signs, just white swallowing everything. My phone was dead. The fuel light blinked for the last 20 miles before the car sputtered and died on a nameless turnout. The silence afterward was deafening. Even the insects had stopped. I stepped out into the cold, flashlight shaking in my hand. The beams stretched barely 6 feet before the mist erased it. The air had that electric charge, the kind right before a thunderstorm, except no storm ever came. Behind me, Passam, the car creaked, cooling in the dark. The windows were still fogged from inside, though I hadn't breathed in there for minutes. For a second, I thought I saw movement, someone leaning across the driver's seat. But when I blinked, it was gone. I walked toward what I thought was the main road. The gravel underfoot shifted, damp and soft. Then the ground changed. My boots sank into something that gave slightly. Not mud, not snow. It felt like skin. I froze. My flashlight beam caught a pale surface beneath a thin layer of mist, smooth and veined like marble. A ripple ran across it, stretching out into the fog. I stumbled back, slipping on the slick ground. The valley light was back, faint and low now, pulsing from beneath my feet. The realization hit me slowly. I wasn't above the valley anymore. I was standing in it. The ground moved again, a slow inhale, and from somewhere beneath came the echo of dozens of whispers. Not words, just breath, rising and falling together. Something brushed my ankle. I kicked away instinctively and ran toward where I thought the overlook had been. Shapes started appearing in the fog, silhouettes walking alongside me, some crouched, some crawling. I could hear them exhale as they passed, each breath colder than the last. When I reached the car again, every window was clear. No fog, no condensation. Inside, the passenger seat was empty, but the rearview mirror faced the wrong way, tilted toward the valley instead of the driver. A faint shimmer pulsed across its surface, reflecting not the car, but the overlook. The figures I'd seen earlier stood lined along the guardrail again, all of them facing outward this time, watching the glowing valley. Among them was me. I looked older in the reflection, my face hollowed, eyes milky. My reflection turned toward me and smiled like it was relieved. "Stay," it mouthed. I raised my hand. The reflection did the same. But its palm was blackened, cracked like burnt glass. I felt a heat building inside my chest, a deep pull downward, like the air was trying to drag me into the mirror. The hum in the valley grew louder, a vibration I could feel in my ribs. "Not this time," I said. I grabbed the rearview mirror and yanked it off the windshield. It shattered against the dashboard, glass scattering across the seat. The glow in the valley flickered once, then dimmed. The silence that followed was total. No light. no breathing. Just the wind returning. Cold, natural, empty. I sat there until dawn. When the sun rose, the valley below looked normal again. No light, no shapes, just trees and frost. The car started on the first try. I drove down the mountain without looking back once. I still see that reflection sometimes in other mirrors, in bathroom stalls, dark windows, rear-view glass, always smiling like it's still there, waiting. But I'm still here too. I got away. I think. That has to count for something. The overlook's been closed now, but every few months someone posts a photo online. The same one, always taken at night, showing a faint silver glow where the valley should be. And if you brighten it, you can see a row of figures on the guardrail. One of them still wears my jacket. I've worked night dispatch for State Patrol 15 years. You learn the sound of voices over a radio, panic, relief, confusion, and how to tell which ones aren't going to make it home. The first call came on November 12th, 2:43 a.m. My shift was quiet. One deer collision, one drunk pickup driver, nothing else. Then the 911 board lit up. The system flagged the call location automatically. Route 190, mile 142. Problem was, that stretch doesn't exist anymore. Route 190 washed out during the 97 landslide and was rerouted 3 miles west. The old mile markers were removed, but the computer doesn't make mistakes. The red dot pulsed on the map exactly where the old road would have been, in the middle of empty forest. I answered. 911, what's your emergency? For a moment, just static. Then a man's voice, breathless, faint. There's been a crash. I'm at the mile marker, 142. Truck flipped. I can't. The line cut. I traced the signal again. Same impossible coordinates. I patched through to Unit 32, the closest car. Officer Miller answered, calm as always. Copy that. I'll check it out. I watched his tracker move along the rerouted highway. After 10 minutes, he radioed back. Dispatch, there's no access road here. Closest pull-off's fenced. You sure about that ping? Positive, I said. It's active. Caller hung up mid-transmission. All right. I'll park and go on foot. The headset filled with the sound of boots crunching through brush, Miller muttering under his breath. Then, there's asphalt back here. Old roadbed. Didn't think any of it was left. Another few seconds. Then his tone shifted. Dispatch. I got headlights. Looks like a semi on its side. This thing's new though. No rust. Plates from last year. The hairs on my neck stood up. Can you confirm a driver? He didn't answer right away. I heard gravel underfoot, then a short exhale. Driver's still in the seat. Silence. Eyes open, he said finally. He's not moving, but his radio's on. The transmission cut to static for 3 full minutes. I called his name again and again. When the feed returned, Miller's voice sounded distant. There's no way this thing's from 97, right? It's clean, like it just happened. Then the line went dead. Backup reached his coordinates half an hour later. Nothing there, just forest and rocks. No wreck, no tire marks, no Miller. The tech team pulled the radio logs the next morning. They matched mine exactly until the signal origin. Every packet of data, every ping, came from inside the dispatch center itself, right under my chair. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. A week later, another call came in from the same spot. Same timestamp. 2:43 a.m. This time a woman's voice, hoarse and wet like she'd been underwater. "He didn't make it," she whispered. "We're still here." Then silence. I checked the system. The trace showed 2 signals overlapping, one inbound, one outbound. The outbound channel was mine. The call was coming from my headset. When I pulled the tape from that night, there were 2 voices recorded on my line, both saying my name at the same time, and one of them sounded exactly like me. After the second call, the department ran diagnostics on every piece of comms gear I touched. Nothing unusual, no external source, but the lieutenant still asked if I'd been drinking. I didn't argue. I just started logging everything myself. Timestamps, frequencies, operator tags, even ambient noise levels. If something was wrong, I'd find it. That's what dispatchers do. We make the chaos make sense. For a few nights, it was quiet. Then came November 19th, 2:43 a.m. again. The 911 console blinked. No ringtone, no notification. Just a red light glowing steady. The incoming line ID said 142-190, the same impossible coordinate string. My gut turned to ice. I recorded the call before I answered. "State Patrol Dispatch, what's your emergency?" The response was faint. Male voice. Older this time. "Unit 32 requesting backup." That was Miller's call sign. I tried to play along, heart pounding. "Copy, Unit 32. What's your location?" A long pause, then. "Truck's still here." I swallowed. "Describe the scene." "Driver's gone now, seat's empty. Thought I saw him move, but..." The rest dissolved into static. The call lasted exactly 2 minutes, 43 seconds before it cut off. I replayed it 3 times, comparing it to the original incident. Every pause, every background noise, identical, down to the second. That's when I noticed the echo. If you play both recordings together, the background static overlaps perfectly, except for one difference. There's a faint second voice layered under mine, whispering along a half-second late. It says, "He's right behind you." That night, I stayed past shift change and opened the old Route 190 case file. I had to see it for myself. The 1997 landslide killed 3 people, a trucker, a road worker, and the responding officer. The officer's name was R. Miller. The first detail report said they never recovered his body, only his radio, found lodged in a tree half a mile from the crash site. Its battery had been dead for decades, but the display was frozen at a timestamp. 2:43 a.m. I must have stared at that photo for an hour. When I finally left, the night air felt wrong, too thick, carrying that sharp smell of cold rain and hot electronics. I sat in my car for a while, watching the reflection of the dispatch tower lights dance across my windshield. Then my radio hissed. Not the department frequency, not anything active, just a single channel lighting up, labeled 32, Route 190. "Dispatch, copy?" The voice was dry, broken, like wind through gravel. My stomach dropped. "Miller?" Static. Then, "Could use a hand down here. It's dark again." The radio went silent, but my dashboard clock froze at 2:43. When I got home, my phone buzzed. New voicemail. The number field was blank. I hit play. It was my own voice recorded off the line. I said, "Copy that, 32. Sending units now." The message ended with a click, followed by a faint scraping noise like boots on gravel. I haven't told anyone. They'd pull me off comms, maybe the whole job. But tonight's my 4th shift since that call, and I can already see the red indicator light pulsing again on the board. Same time, same channel. It's waiting for me to answer. If I don't pick it up, the call still connects. And the voice that answers on the recording isn't mine anymore. I swore I wouldn't answer again. But when the light on the console started flashing red, the room seemed to hum with it. The air around me vibrated like power lines before a storm. 2:43 a.m., sharp. No one else was on duty. Night shifts are skeleton crew now, just me and the low buzz of the servers. The red light blinked steady, patient. I told myself I'd record it one more time, then log off. Evidence. Proof that whatever was happening wasn't in my head. I pressed the button. State Patrol Dispatch. Go ahead. A pause, then. Dispatch. I found him. It was Miller's voice again, but weaker, like it was coming from miles underground. Found who? The driver. He's still warm. The background static was different this time. Less like interference, more like breathing. I heard movement, fabric brushing the receiver, boots grinding against gravel. "Miller, where are you?" I asked. He didn't answer. The signal pinged on the map. Route 190, mile 142. I could see it glowing, a single red dot pulsing in the middle of black nothing. "You shouldn't have come back," he whispered. The line popped. My monitors flickered, all of them showing the same feed. A dashboard camera frozen on a cracked 2-lane road, headlights spilling across a jackknifed semi. That shouldn't have been possible. The department wiped those archives years ago. Then my own voice came over the channel. "Copy that, 32. Sending units now." I hadn't said a word. The room temperature dropped fast. My breath fogged in front of me. The hum behind the walls deepened into a rhythmic pulse, syncing perfectly with the blinking light. For a split second, I thought I could hear something beneath the floor, the faint echo of a radio speaker crackling in the dark. "Dispatch?" Miller said again. "You left me here too long." I tried to cut the line. The button stuck under my finger, the plastic warm. On the screen, the call timer ran backward. 0010, 0009, 00. When it hit 0, everything stopped. Silence. Then the static returned. Not over the radio, but from the walls themselves. The console lights flickered, and a faint male silhouette appeared in the reflection on the glass divider beside me. His outline was blurred, as if he were standing underwater. "You can't fix what isn't broken," he said softly. The power surged, and the monitors all went black except one. On it was a single line of text. "Dispatch confirmed Miller. Active unit." My headset clicked on automatically. Through the earpiece came my own voice again, calm and procedural. 10-4, dispatch, en route to 142. I ripped the headset off, heart hammering. The clock on the wall had stopped at 2:43. I don't remember leaving the building, just finding myself in my car, parked on the service road. The radio inside the car was still tuned to the patrol frequency, speaker hissing softly. "Copy that, dispatch," the voice said. "Got your signal. You're clear for pickup." Headlights flickered on behind me, washing the trees in pale light. I turned to look. There was no vehicle, No sound of an engine. Just that light, bright and steady, coming from nowhere. When it faded, the road ahead was empty. But my dashboard computer glowed. A new call log entry had appeared. Active operator, R. Miller, status, on duty. Dispatcher, unavailable. I stared at it until the screen went dark. They called me in the next morning, said the system recorded a 911 transfer at 2:43, same as always. But this time, the voice on the playback wasn't mine. It said, "Calm as ever. State Patrol dispatch. What's your emergency?" The new night dispatcher says the console sometimes lights up by itself now. The calls are always silent, except for a faint voice that sounds like it's sitting right behind him, asking for backup. I've been hauling freight for 20 years. You get used to strange things on the road. Bad weather, blown tires, things you can't explain. But this was different. It started with a weigh ticket. I picked up a refrigerated trailer out of Omaha, loaded with boxed produce headed for Portland. The manifest said 38,120 pounds. Routine run. I checked the seals, temp, everything. Reefer unit was set to 38 degrees, normal. When I hit the first weigh station outside Lincoln, the scale ticket read 38,040. 400 pounds heavier. I thought maybe water buildup, frost in the coils, nothing serious. I logged it and rolled on. The second station, near Kearney, showed 39,180. Now that's not possible. Cargo doesn't gain weight while sealed. I called dispatch. The girl on duty laughed, said, "Guess your bananas got fat." She told me to keep driving, just note it. By midnight, I was pushing through fog thick as milk. The road ahead glowed in the headlights like it was underwater. The temperature outside dropped fast, down to 26. I could hear the reefer humming louder than usual. That deep diesel pulse like something breathing behind you. At 2:00 a.m., I stopped at a rest area near North Platte. Nobody there but a parked pickup and a vending machine buzzing off-key. I checked the trailer, flashlight cutting through the mist. The thermometer read 38 steady, but frost crawled up the outside walls in long streaks. The hum never stopped. When I climbed back into the cab, the sleeper smelled faintly sweet. Not diesel, not fruit. Something thicker, like syrup gone bad. I cracked a window, figured maybe a coolant leak, but the air coming from the trailer vents was warm. That's not supposed to happen. A reefer unit blows cold or it shuts down. It doesn't heat itself. I checked the control panel. Temp, 38 degree F. Fuel, full. Alarm, none. Everything fine, on paper. Still, the hum got louder when I stood next to it. I swear I could feel it through the concrete, a faint vibration climbing up my legs. I tried to sleep anyway. Truckers learned to ignore weird noises. Around 3:00 a.m., I heard the trailer door shift, a slow creak of metal settling. Then something heavier, like a wet slide across the floor inside. I sat up fast, heartbeat loud in my ears. Silence. Then another sound. Faint tapping, rhythmic, against the inside wall. I told myself, produce boxes shift. It happens. But I'd never heard boxes tap. At sunrise, I rolled back on the highway, half a pot of coffee keeping me alive. The reefer ran steady, no alarms, but the vibration followed. It felt heavier behind me, like pulling through mud. I told myself I was imagining it until the next weigh station outside Cheyenne. Ticket came back, 40,080. I stared at the slip for a long time. Over 2,000 pounds heavier than I left Omaha. The guy at the scale booth leaned out and called, "You got a load of concrete back there, or what?" "Produce, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. He frowned. "Trailer's warm to the touch." That stuck with me. Warm. I asked if I could open it, but company rules said no. Sealed loads only. I signed the paper and kept driving. The hum never stopped. When I checked my mirror that night, the frost on the trailer doors was melting from the inside, running down like sweat. By Wyoming, the hum had a rhythm, slow, steady, almost like breathing. It vibrated through the steering column, through the floor, right up my spine. I told myself it was in my head. Long hours, caffeine, highway hypnosis. But when I stopped for fuel, the whole trailer shuddered like it was exhaling. The pump attendant gave me a look. "You got livestock in there?" "No," I said. "Vegetables." He laughed, but didn't sound convinced. When I handed him the receipt, I noticed his fingers twitch, rubbing the paper like it was warm. The air smelled strange again. Not sweet this time. Heavier, like wet earth. I walked the length of the trailer with my flashlight. The frost lines were thicker, raised almost like veins. Every few seconds I thought I heard something shift inside, a slow drag, like a heavy tarp being pulled over metal. I hit the side panel with my fist. "Stop it!" The sound stopped. For a moment, the whole night went silent. Then came 3 dull knocks from inside, slow, deliberate, answering mine. I backed up fast, flashlight trembling. The trailer went quiet again. I climbed back in the cab and locked the doors, which is stupid, because whatever could move that much weight didn't care about locks. By the time I crossed the border into Utah, the truck was sluggish, the engine straining like I was hauling a mountain. The weigh station before Ogden was automated. Just drive over the plates and read your weight. The number flashed in green on the board as I passed. 42,900. Almost 5,000 pounds more. I hadn't picked up a single thing. Dispatch wouldn't answer. I tried calling 3 times. Straight to voicemail. The company app showed my route still in progress. Estimated delivery 5:30 a.m. No warnings, no notes. The GPS dot crawled along the highway like nothing was wrong. The reefer unit roared louder behind me. It shouldn't have been running that high. I checked the temperature readout again. 38 degrees. Always 38. Never changed. But the air blowing through the cab vents was hot now, thick and damp, carrying a faint smell of produce gone bad, and something underneath it. Something meaty. At a rest stop near Tremonton, I couldn't take it anymore. I broke company policy. I grabbed the seal cutter from my side door, walked to the back, and cut the tag. Steam poured out the moment I unlatched the first lock. Not cold vapor, steam. My flashlight beam dissolved in it. The smell hit me next, rotten fruit and iron, like someone had mixed compost with blood. I opened the doors just enough to look inside. At first it looked normal, boxes stacked to the ceiling, but the floor was slick. Liquid pooled along the edge, dripping onto the pavement. Then I noticed the boxes were moving. Slow undulations, like breathing under a tarp. I stepped closer. The air shimmered with heat. The cardboard at the top began to sag, pulsing slightly. One of the boxes split open with a wet pop. Something thick and pale pushed through. Not fruit, not plant. Flesh maybe glistening in the beam of my flashlight. The hum from the reefer deepened, almost satisfied. The heat poured out harder, thick enough to sting my eyes. I slammed the doors shut and drove until sunrise. I didn't stop, didn't eat, didn't think. The trailer groaned behind me like it was dreaming. When I hit the Oregon border, the smell filled the cab again, and this time, I swear I heard it. A faint sound beneath the hum. A heartbeat. When I checked the reefer panel at the next stop, the digital readout finally changed. It didn't show 38 degrees anymore. It said, Growth Stage 3. I should have dumped the load miles ago, but by the time I hit Oregon, it was too late. The manifest was still clean, the GPS still pinged, and dispatch still expected delivery at 5:30 a.m. I kept thinking if I just dropped it at the cold storage lot and signed the release, whatever was happening would stop being my problem. The reefer's hum deepened the closer I got to Portland, low and slow, like an idling engine underground. Every bump in the road made the trailer sway. I could feel it tug through the hitch, something shifting inside like liquid mass. The final way station sat 10 miles out. I didn't want to stop, but if I skipped it, they'd find me. The scale display glowed through the fog as I rolled across. 4,400. I just sat there, staring at the number. The officer stepped out of the booth, flashlight bouncing off my window. He asked for my manifest, then circled back to the trailer, rapping his knuckles against the metal. "Feels hot," he said. "What are you hauling?" "Produce." My voice cracked. He frowned. "It's dripping." I climbed out. Steam was rising from the floor seams. He crouched, touching the runoff with his glove. It came away dark red. "Coolant leak?" he asked. I shook my head. "It's not supposed to be liquid inside." The reefer roared suddenly, full throttle, drowning everything. The ground shook. The officer backed away, shouting something I couldn't hear. The temperature display on the unit blinked wildly. 37, 39, 41, 98, 120. Then it went blank. The metal panels bulged outward, groaning under pressure. Something hit the inside of the doors. Once, twice, then again, heavier. The locks bent. Steam poured from the hinges. The officer grabbed my arm. "Step away!" The doors blew open. Heat slammed into us like an oven blast. The smell hit next. Rot, ammonia, and something sweet, like syrup burning. The interior was filled with thick, pink vapor. Shapes shifted in the haze, mounds rising and falling, wet and slow. Cardboard floated like tissue on a pond. Beneath it, something glistened, pulsing faintly with each breath of the reefer unit. The officer stumbled back, hand over his mouth. "What the hell is that?" I couldn't answer, because I recognized it. The stacked produce boxes had fused into one glistening mass. Cords of pulp and skin stretched between them like veins. And under it all, I could hear it moving, eating. The reefer's diesel coughed once and died. The sound inside the trailer grew louder, not humming anymore, but a heartbeat. Deep, steady, enormous. The officer ran. I didn't. I stood there watching as the thing inside reached the doors, pressing forward, reshaping itself against the frame. The air shimmered with heat and moisture. Then it spoke. Not words, just my name, whispered in a dozen wet, overlapping voices. "Eddie?" I turned and ran for the cab, slamming the door and flooring the throttle. The trailer groaned behind me, hitch clanging, black steam curling out from the vents. I didn't look back until I was 20 miles out. The rear view showed firelight blooming behind me, not from flames, but from heat, the air warping with it. The highway signs bent in the shimmer. I ditched the rig outside a rest stop and kept driving the company pickup. No one's found the trailer since. The DOT says the way station burned down that night. They listed it as an electrical fault. But I still get emails from dispatch sometimes. Load 7136 overdue. Temperature reading 38 degrees. And once, last week, I heard it again on the CB, faint through the static. Unit 7136. Load complete. Request new carrier. Sometimes when the night's quiet enough, I swear I can hear that slow, heavy hum under the highway, like the road itself is breathing. I was chasing folklore when I found the bridge, or what used to be one. I'd been collecting stories for a history podcast, the kind about forgotten places and urban legends. A county archivist in rural Pennsylvania said, "If you're driving through Rowan County, skip the old iron bridge on Hollow Creek Road." I laughed, thinking he was joking. Then he looked up from his papers and said, "There's no creek." I thought he meant it had dried up, but when I checked the old maps, there was never a creek drawn there at all. Just a dip between two ridges, marked bridge, built 1912, condemned 1978. Nothing else. Naturally, I had to see it. The road was barely a road anymore. Cracked asphalt hemmed by skeletal trees and patches of frozen mud. My rental car hated every turn. Around dusk, the GPS dropped signal, leaving me with just the paper map and the last orange smear of sunset. The air smelled like rust and pine sap. When I rounded the final bend, there it was, a steel truss bridge stretching over nothing. The valley beneath wasn't carved by water. It was just black soil, soft-looking and perfectly smooth, like ash after a fire. I parked at the edge and got out, recorder in hand. The metal frame creaked faintly in the wind, and something about it felt off. Not old, not decaying, just waiting. The plaque at the entrance was corroded, but I could still read the inscription. Rowan County Public Works, Project 117. Under it, someone had scratched words into the rust. Don't cross twice. The air was colder here. My breath fogged even though it hadn't elsewhere on the road. I started recording notes, narrating like I always do for later editing. November 17th, Hollow Creek Road, bridge over a dry cut. Locals say it leads nowhere. My own voice echoed back across the span, hollow and tinny, like someone else repeating me from the far end. I stopped talking. The echo stopped too. I stepped onto the first plank. The sound of my boot hitting metal didn't echo normally. It had weight, like it fell farther than the bridge should have allowed. I crossed halfway, the metal vibrating faintly beneath me. The air tasted metallic. The soil below seemed to ripple, faintly, in the growing dark. Just the wind, I told myself. When I reached the center, I noticed the railings didn't line up right. The far end looked longer than the near side, stretching out as if the bridge were still building itself. I blinked, and the horizon seemed to pulse, like a breath. Something whispered under the structure, a low hum, more felt than heard. I crouched, holding the recorder closer to the metal, and caught it. Rhythmic, almost like language, repeating in 3-beat patterns. I turned back toward the car. It felt farther away than before. As I walked, I realized my footprints on the dusted metal were gone. The bridge surface behind me was perfectly clean, like no one had stepped there. The hum grew louder, shifting pitch with every step I took. When I finally reached the end and stepped off, the sound stopped instantly. I turned to take one last photo. The bridge was empty. And at the far end, just where I'd been standing seconds ago, a figure was crossing toward me. Recorder in hand, coat like mine, moving in perfect sync. When I lifted my camera, the flash went off, and in the light, the bridge was gone, but the figure kept walking. I drove back to town with my recorder still running. The only sound, my own breath shaking. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, the road behind me looked wrong, stretched too far, as if the bridge were still visible even after it should have been long gone. The GPS was dead again. My phone showed no service, but the clock still read 6:17 p.m., the same time I'd first stepped onto the bridge. It hadn't changed. At the county records office, the archivist was still there, working under a buzzing fluorescent light. His name tag said, Leary. He looked up when I came in. "You went there," he said. Not a question. I set the recorder on the counter. "What is that place?" He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You shouldn't have crossed it once. Nobody should." I told him what I'd seen, the echo of my own voice, the second figure. He just nodded like he'd heard it all before. "The bridge was built over a sinkhole," he said finally. "But it wasn't a hole in the earth. It was older than that. When the county tried to fill it, the ground refused to stay put. They said the soil breathed." He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo, black and white, creased. The same bridge, brand new, sunlight gleaming off the trusses. At the near end, a man stood with his back to the camera. "That's the engineer who designed it," Leary said. "Went missing during construction. They found his boots on the span, but no footprints leading off." He slid the photo closer. "You see what's wrong?" At first I didn't. Then I realized the shadows were off. The man's was pointing east. The bridge's rails cast theirs west. 2 light sources. "Every few years," he went on, "someone wanders up there. Same story. They think they're hearing an echo, but it's not an echo. It's something using the sound to find its way out." He looked at me, eyes pale under the flickering light. "You brought something back, didn't you?" I wanted to say no, but my recorder clicked by itself, playback starting without me touching it. The last file from the bridge played. My own voice came through. "November 17th, Hollow Creek Road, bridge over a dry cut." Then, after my last word, a second voice repeated it, half a beat late. Same tone, same cadence, mine. Leary shut it off. "If it followed, it'll need a way to anchor. You'll feel it soon, like something catching your reflection." The air in the office felt heavier. The window glass behind him shivered, not from wind, but from sound. Low, deep, almost like breathing again. He stood and grabbed a flashlight. "You need to leave Rowan County. Don't stay past dark." I nodded, pocketed the recorder, and headed for the door. As I stepped outside, the streetlights blinked on, except the one nearest my car, which flickered once, then stayed dark. The reflection in the windshield wasn't mine. It looked like me, but its mouth was moving, forming words I couldn't hear through the glass. When I stepped closer, it smiled, raised its hand, and waved. Then the inside of the windshield fogged from within, tracing words backward in the condensation. "Next turn." By the time I reached the edge of town, every signpost was pointing toward Hollow Creek Road again, even the ones I passed minutes before. The highway should have taken me out of Rowan County within 20 minutes, but the signs kept looping back. Each mile marker read Hollow Creek Reed, 1 mile. I drove faster, watching the same gas station, same dead billboard, same line of trees whip by again and again. When I passed the old diner for the 3rd time, I finally stopped. The air outside was still and wet, colder than it had been an hour ago. My phone clock still read 6:17 p.m. The forest ahead looked darker now, the trees bending inward as though the road itself was being swallowed. Something about the silence told me I wasn't alone. I checked my mirror. My reflection was smiling again. Only this time, it didn't move when I did. Its mouth hung open, showing too many teeth, and then, perfectly synchronized with the wind, it whispered, "You're late." The headlights flickered. When I turned them back on, the bridge was there again, directly ahead. My car idled at its edge, the metal trusses stretching into darkness. The soil below looked deeper, not flat anymore, but shifting, like a slow current. I thought about turning around, but the road behind me was gone, just fog and silence. The hum started again, the same deep rhythm I'd recorded the first night. My recorder clicked on by itself in the passenger seat. The LED blinked red, though the screen was blank. The voice that came out was mine. "Don't cross twice." But I'd already stepped out. The bridge groaned under my weight. The metal vibrated faintly, humming in my bones. Each step forward made the air heavier, pressing on my chest. Halfway across, I stopped. The valley below wasn't dark anymore. It was filled with a dull red light, rising slowly, pulsing in time with the hum. Shapes moved in it, thin, upright figures swaying like weeds underwater. I raised my recorder. If anyone finds this, static swallowed my words. On the far end of the bridge, a figure appeared, walking toward me. My first thought was that it was a reflection. Same coat, same recorder, same pace. But the light from below illuminated its face first. It was mine, but wrong. Skin too pale, eyes too deep. The expression was calm, almost kind. When we were 10 feet apart, it spoke. "You were supposed to warn them." I stepped back. "Warn who?" "The next one." Behind me, the car engine started. The headlights swung across the trusses, blinding me. When I looked again, the other version of me was gone. I ran. Every step made the bridge ring like a bell. The hum turned into voices, hundreds whispering in overlapping tones, repeating a single phrase. Cross and return. Cross and return. When I reached the end, the air snapped cold. My car was gone. The road behind me was forest again. I checked the recorder. The file was still running. Timestamp, 6:17 p.m. I walked for what felt like hours, until I saw headlights through the trees. A sedan pulled over near the bridge entrance. A man was standing outside, camera in hand, narrating softly into a microphone. November 17th, Hollow Creek Road, bridge over a dry cut. He sounded like me. He didn't see me standing in the shadows. When his flashlight flickered across the plaque, the letters I'd read before were gone. Now it said, Project 1 on 18, Restoration in progress. He stepped onto the first plank. The bridge hummed, welcoming him. I left the recorder on the railing before I walked away. It's still there waiting for whoever comes next, and when they play it back, they'll hear me saying, "Don't cross twice." You stop noticing how dark the highway is when you work nights. What you do notice are the bathrooms. They all smell the same, like bleach, metal, and something underneath you never get clean. I've been the overnight custodian at the I-90 rest area for 8 years. Same hours, same routine. Nothing much changes, except stall 3. Every rest stop has one bad stall. Ours has stall 3. It started last November. Right after midnight, the motion sensors would trigger when no one was inside. The cleaning system has a digital counter that tracks occupancy. Every time I walked in alone, it said 7. I reset it. It went back to 7. I told maintenance. They said the sensor was glitching from humidity. I replaced it myself anyway. The next night, the count still jumped when I entered. You learn to stop arguing with weird things when you work around them long enough. The building's lit by cold LEDs that make everything look the same shade of blue-gray. The tiles are always damp from condensation. When the fans cut out, you can hear the highway like a distant ocean, steady, endless, swallowing the world. That night, I was mopping when the lights flickered. Just once, the motion sensor beeped. Count 8. I froze. No one had walked in. No doors had opened. I checked every stall, 1, 2, 4, 5, empty. Then I reached 3. The door was shut. I knocked. No answer. I pushed it open. Nothing there but the smell. Not rot, not sewage. Something sweet and faintly electric, like burnt sugar and copper. The air was colder inside that stall. I stepped back, the mop handle shaking in my hands. When I left, I shut the door and watched it swing slowly open behind me, inch by inch. By 2:00 a.m., I was outside dumping trash when I saw movement in the window reflection. Someone walked behind me in the restroom, a shadow passing between the sinks. I hurried back inside, calling out, "Restrooms are closed for cleaning." The place was empty. The lights buzzed steady overhead, but stall 3 was closed again. I listened. Nothing. Then the sensor beeped once more. Count 9. That was impossible. The counter caps at 8. The screen blinked, digits flickering, then froze on a symbol I'd never seen. An 8 flipped sideways. Infinity. I killed the breaker. The lights went out. The sound that came next wasn't electrical. It was breathing. Low, steady, coming from stall 3. I backed toward the door, fumbling for my flashlight. When the beam hit the stall, the air shimmered like heat rising from asphalt. Then something knocked back from inside, slow, heavy, deliberate. I turned and ran out into the parking lot. The cold hit hard, grounding me. The highway hummed in the distance, trucks passing like ghosts. When I went back 20 minutes later, every stall door was standing wide open except one. 3. The cleaning sensor read 0. I thought maybe that meant it was over. Then I saw the mop bucket. It had rolled across the floor and stopped perfectly in front of stall 3, like something had pushed it there. The next morning, the manager showed me security footage from 1:58 a.m., and in the grainy reflection on the tile, I wasn't alone when I walked in. The security footage didn't make sense. The manager, Rob, brought me into the office just after dawn. He looked like he hadn't slept either. The monitor showed me pushing my mop cart through the men's room at 1:57 a.m. Then, as I passed stall 3, the reflection in the floor tiles showed a second pair of feet following me, bare, grayish, and perfectly still even when I stopped moving. When I turned to face the stall, the other set of feet turned too, just a half-second behind. Rob paused the footage, rubbed his face. "Probably a camera artifact," he said. "Double exposure or whatever." We both knew the feed was digital. There's no double exposure in digital. He deleted the file, said he didn't want to spook travelers. That night I came in early, brought my own camera, a cheap GoPro. I set it up facing the stalls before lights on. Everything looked normal through the tiny screen, until I walked out of frame. Then the bathroom lights flickered again. When I reviewed the playback later, the frame warped every time I got near stall 3. A faint shimmer, like heat or static, bloomed from under the door. At 12:46 a.m., the sensor counter beeped again. 7. I was the only one there. Then 8. Then 9. The lights dimmed, the air grew thick. The cleaning fluid in the mop bucket began to ripple. Small concentric rings like something moving beneath it. I heard a soft click behind me, the latch on stall 3 sliding shut. I called out, "Restrooms are closed!" My voice cracked. Silence. I gripped the mop handle like a weapon and walked slowly toward the stall. The closer I got, the colder the air became. The metal divider sweated condensation. When I touched the door, the chill sank straight into my hand. I pulled it open. Empty. Only the faint reflection of myself in the mirror beyond the sinks. Except my reflection wasn't moving right. It lingered half a second behind, like it was thinking about what to do next. Then something behind me exhaled. The mop bucket tipped over. The sound echoed too long, too heavy for a small room. The stall door slammed shut on its own. The hinges screamed. I bolted out into the hallway, heart hammering. The sensor above the doorway flashed a new number I'd never seen before. When I returned with Rob in the morning, everything was spotless. Floors bone dry, doors open, counters gleaming. The counter had reset to 0. He gave me this look like he was deciding whether to fire me or call a doctor. "You been sleeping okay?" he asked. I didn't answer, because over his shoulder, in the mirror behind the sinks, stall 3's door was closed. I didn't say a word. That was Friday. Saturday night, I brought salt, like I'd read online. Drew a thin white line across the floor in front of stall 3. The smell of bleach and cold metal filled my lungs. At exactly 2:00 a.m., the lights flickered again. The counter jumped to 1. Something heavy pressed against the other side of the door. Then the salt line smeared, like a wet hand had dragged through it. I ran. I didn't stop until I was outside, where the vending machines hummed and the interstate lights glowed orange in the fog. When I came back at sunrise, the stall door was open again. Inside, the words "cleaned" were scrawled on the wall in what looked like gray dust. That afternoon, a traveler left a review on the rest area website. "Thanks to the janitor for helping my son when he got lost last night. We found his footprints in the restroom. Bare, size small." By Sunday, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined everything. Sleep deprivation, fumes, routine. It wears on you. That's what I told myself as I clocked in again at 11:00 p.m., same as always. The highway was empty. Not quiet. Just empty. You can still hear it breathe out there. Truck engines miles away. Wind cutting through overpasses. The hum of tires somewhere out of sight. Inside, the building smelled new, like someone had replaced every tile overnight. But stall 3 still waited at the end of the row, door slightly ajar, the same rust mark near the base, shaped vaguely like a hand. I decided to end it. No more cameras, no salt, no tricks, just cleaning. Routine. I set my cart down, filled the bucket, and started mopping from the back forward. When I reached stall 3, I paused. The door was closed again. No sound, no movement. I pushed it open. Empty. I mopped the floor, wiped down the metal edges, scrubbed until my knees ached. I talked while I worked, just to fill the silence. "See? Nothing to be scared of," I said, half to myself. Then my mop hit something soft. Not on the floor, in the drain. The bristles snagged. I bent down and shined my flashlight. A piece of fabric clung to the grate, wet and dark gray. It looked like part of a shirt sleeve. I reached down to pull it free. The drain exhaled. Warm, wet air, smelling like copper and ammonia, blew against my wrist. I stumbled back. The lights flickered, every fixture popping once in rhythm with the motion sensor. Count. 7. I backed toward the exit. Count. 8. Then a stall door clicked. Count. 9. I yelled, "Who's there?" My voice echoed like it had miles to travel before it came back. The reflection in the mirrors rippled. I saw myself again, mop in hand. But the version of me in the glass wasn't moving anymore. Its head turned slowly toward stall 3. The drain gurgled, louder, rhythmic, like breath through a throat. Then the stall door began to shake, the hinges rattling as if something inside was slamming both hands against it, faster, heavier. I grabbed the breaker switch by the door and hit the lights. Darkness swallowed everything. When I turned my flashlight back on, the stall was open. The drain was empty. The counter read 0, and on the mirror, where my reflection should have been, someone had drawn a message with a wet fingertip. "Your turn." I don't remember leaving. The next thing I knew, I was in my truck in the parking lot, the engine running, sunrise bleeding into the horizon. I told Rob I quit that morning. He didn't argue. He just nodded and said, "We already hired someone else. The new guy starts tonight." I asked him if he'd told the kid about stall 3. He frowned. "We don't have a stall 3 anymore. They tore that section down last spring." I wanted to tell him that wasn't possible, that I'd just been there, but he'd already turned away. I drove past the building one last time before heading out of state. The windows were dark, taped over for renovation. But through the glass, I could see faint movement, a reflection in the row of mirrors. Someone mopping. Someone who looked exactly like me too. They reopened the rest area this month under a new name. Travelers say the place looks brand new, but the janitor's closet door still sticks around 2:00 a.m., like someone's holding it shut from the inside. I drive rideshare across 3 states. It pays better than most people think, especially around the holidays. November nights are long, and the road feels emptier the closer you get to Thanksgiving. That night, I was somewhere between Utah and Idaho, chasing surge fares on an empty highway. The stars were sharp and cold, the kind that make you feel like the world's ending quietly above you. I was parked outside a truck stop when the ping came through. No sound, no vibration, just a red circle blinking on my map. Pickup, mile 61 pullout. Destination, blank. The fare amount was $66.6. I laughed out loud. Must have been a glitch. But the app clock started counting down, waiting for me to accept. Normally, if you ignore a ride that weird, it disappears in a few seconds. This one didn't, so I hit accept. The route line stretched into nothing. No address, no road markings, just a blank gray grid. My GPS said, "Turn right in 500 feet." The pullout was real enough. A gravel patch off the shoulder, no lights except the red glow of my taillights bouncing off fog. My headlights picked out a lone figure standing near the guardrail. Tall, coat zipped to the chin, face turned toward the valley. When I stopped, they didn't move. I rolled the window down. "You call for a ride?" The person nodded, but didn't speak. They opened the back door and slid in. The smell that came with them wasn't bad, just old, like attic dust and winter air. The app chimed. Passenger picked up. "Where to?" I asked. Silence. The app updated. Destination. Home. The map showed nothing but a straight line west through empty terrain. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Long way to go tonight." From the rearview mirror, I could just make out the passenger's reflection. Pale face, dark eyes, no expression. Their hands rested on their knees, fingers too long, like they'd been stretched. "Rough night?" I asked, because small talk is easier than silence. A pause, then a whisper. "Long drive." Their voice sounded wrong, like it came from the floor of the car, not their mouth. The road narrowed to 2 lanes. My phone screen flickered, the map stuttering. The clock froze at 2:43 a.m. Every time I glanced in the mirror, the reflection was closer. Not the passenger, but the reflection. The real one sat still. The one in the glass leaned forward, like it wanted to see me better. When I blinked, it reset. Hands folded, eyes down. I told myself I was tired. I told myself it was tricks of the light. Then the radio switched on by itself. A soft voice came through the static. "Almost home." The passenger didn't move. The voice was mine. The car's speedometer started climbing, even though my foot wasn't on the pedal. 65. 70. 80. The hum of the tires turned into a high-pitched whine. "Hey," I said, twisting around. "Seatbelt, please." They finally looked up. The motion was stiff, jerky, like a puppet. Their eyes caught the light from the dash, and for a second, I swear I saw my own reflection staring back. "You missed your turn," they said. I glanced at the GPS. The map had rotated completely. Now the line led back the way I'd come. The little blue arrow blinked inside a perfect circle. When I looked back up, the passenger was gone. But the seat was still pressed down, and the rearview mirror showed someone sitting there, smiling faintly in the dark. I pulled over the second I realized the seat was empty. The highway was dead quiet. No cars, no wind, no sound, but the faint tick of the engine cooling. I turned on the dome light. The back seat was indented, still warm. My phone buzzed. A new notification. "Rider on board. ETA 3:06 a.m. The timer counted down even though there was nobody back there. I uninstalled the app. Didn't matter. The clock on the dash synced itself, the numbers pulsing with the same rhythm. 2:43, 2:44, 2:43. I killed the engine. The hum kept going. When I finally stepped out, the cold hit me like static. The fog on the road ahead had thickened, stretching across both lanes like a curtain. My headlights couldn't touch it. Then the back door clicked open on its own. The interior lights stayed off, and The smell came again. Dust and cold and something like ozone. I leaned down to look. No one there. Just the faint outline of a seatbelt locked tight across the empty seat. I slammed the door and drove. I didn't care where. I passed a mile marker. 61 again. Then another. 61. Then another. Every marker said 61. When I checked the mirror, the reflection of the back seat was darker than it should have been, like the night had pooled there. The radio switched back on. ETA 306, my own voice said, cheerful, distant. I turned it off. It came back. Traffic's light tonight. You're making good time. The voice in the radio started laughing, not loud, but low, breathless, like it was sitting in the passenger seat, trying not to be heard. Then it said something that froze me. Eyes on the road. Driver. The rearview mirror shifted by itself, angling down toward the back seat. I grabbed it, forcing it forward again. Nope, not tonight. The map flickered back to life on its own. The line didn't lead west anymore. It led straight into a gray void where the terrain data should have been. At the end, a small icon blinked. Home. I pulled over again. If this was a glitch, I wanted it gone for good. I opened the ride history. The last trip read, Pickup, mile 61, pullout, drop-off 11. Hollow Street, Boise ID status, in progress. That address didn't exist. Still, I typed it into a different map app. The search spun, froze, and the phone screen glitched to black. In its reflection, my face smiled back at me, even though I wasn't. Something whispered from the back seat, close enough to fog the window. Almost home. I floored it. After 20 minutes, lights appeared ahead. Streetlights, houses, a town. Relief washed through me until I realized something was wrong. Every gas station, diner, and billboard looked familiar, but old. Like versions of places I'd passed hours ago, faded and quiet. I stopped under a streetlight. The sign at the corner read, Hollow Street. My phone buzzed one last time. Destination reached. The back door opened again. This time I didn't look. I just stared straight ahead as footsteps scraped against gravel, walking around the front of the car. Something knocked twice on the driver's window. I looked up. It was me. Pale. Wet. Smiling. You missed your turn. When the figure stepped back, the headlights flickered, and the driver's seatbelt clicked itself shut around my chest. The belt cinched across my chest so tight it stole my breath. I yanked at the buckle, but it wouldn't release. The dashboard lights blinked red, the car idling though my foot wasn't on the pedal. The steering wheel turned by itself toward the empty road ahead. Drive, my voice said from the radio. The figure outside, my double, stood in the high beams, skin too smooth, too pale. It tilted its head slowly, listening to the hum of the engine like it was music. Take me home. I did what any terrified idiot would do. I slammed the gear shift into reverse, hit the gas, and floored it. Gravel sprayed. The seatbelt jerked tighter, cutting into my ribs. The figure didn't chase. It just smiled as the fog swallowed it whole. The speedometer shot up again. 60, 80, 90. The highway blurred. The same mile marker whipped past. 61. Again and again. My GPS reactivated, glowing bright red. The app had updated. Fare complete in 6.6 miles. Drop-off confirmed. That made no sense. I was still driving backward. The car jerked violently, almost like I'd hit something. I slammed the brakes. Everything went still. No hum, no engine noise, not even wind. The world outside looked flat, colorless. I stepped out. The air was dry and heavy, the kind that doesn't move. The road stretched both ways into fog. Behind me, the car door shut on its own. A voice drifted from inside. Mine again. You weren't supposed to leave the car. The fog parted just enough to show another road sign. Hollow Street, 0.3 mi. I followed it. My shoes made no sound. Every step forward felt like walking downhill, even on level ground. The houses along the roadside were quiet. No lights. No driveways. Just shells. When I reached the end of the street, there it was. A house 2 stories, white paint peeling, porch sagging. The front door hung open. Inside, faint yellow light flickered like candle flame. My phone buzzed. Drop-off completed. Thank you for driving with us. Then the message. Would you like to rate your rider? I laughed. Too hard, too high. The sound echoed like static through the trees. From inside the house, something moved. Not footsteps. The whole structure seemed to exhale, the porch boards bending inward as if the building itself was breathing. Then I saw it through the window. A figure sitting in the driver's seat of a car parked inside the living room. Same make, same color as mine. Its headlights were on, and in the driver's seat, a shape moved. Me. Except older. Eyes sunken, skin gray, expression blank. I stepped closer to the window. My reflection inside turned and looked straight at me. Its lips moved. You missed your turn. The car's horn blared once. The sound ripped through the fog, and suddenly I was back on the highway, engine roaring, headlights cutting through empty space. The clock blinked 3:06 a.m. The app had closed itself. My passenger list was empty. My earnings showed 66. I pulled over at the first gas station I saw. Inside, the attendant gave me a strange look. You all right, man? You look like you've been up all night. Yeah, I said, voice cracking. Just dropped someone off. He pointed out the window. Your back seat's fogged up. I turned. The windows were gray with condensation. Words traced backward through the mist, written by an unseen hand. Thanks for the ride. I left the car running and walked away. Now, when I drive at night, I use a different phone, a different app, a different route. But every once in a while, my GPS still pings mile 61 pullout. The screen flashes red, and a familiar voice asks, "Ready to go home?" I learned how to decline that ride, but the app still remembers me. And sometimes, when I check my balance, there's a new payment waiting, 60 tip from rider home. When you drive long enough, you start remembering places by smell instead of name. Diesel, rain on asphalt, bad coffee. But I'll never forget the way this one smelled. Warm sugar and gasoline. It was November 29th, 3 years ago. I was headed west, trying to outrun a snow front that had already swallowed half of Kansas. The fuel gauge had been flirting with empty for 40 miles when I saw the sign. Station ahead, 1 mile, 24-hour service. Relief washed through me. I don't remember passing that sign on any previous trips, but it was late, and the interstate can play tricks on tired eyes. The station appeared out of the dark like it had been waiting for me. An old-fashioned setup. 1 building, 2 pumps, glass door propped open with a brick. Neon sign buzzing over the awning. Rosevale Gas and Deli. The parking lot glistened with fresh rain even though the sky was clear. I remember thinking it was strange the concrete looked wet, but the air didn't smell like rain. Just sweet and heavy, like syrup burning on a stove. Inside, everything felt stuck in time. Metal shelves, paper maps, old travel mugs with faded logos. A single fluorescent tube hummed above me. The cooler cases buzzed with a faint chill. Behind the counter sat a man in a red attendant's vest. He looked mid-40s, clean-shaven, polite smile, name tag reading Eddie. "Late night, huh?" he said, voice too chipper for 1 a.m. "Long drive," I told him. "Didn't think anything out here was open." He chuckled. "Oh, we're always open, especially tonight." I swiped my card. No signal. Eddie waved it off. "Cash is fine." I filled the tank under yellow light, the old pump clicking in slow, uneven bursts. The air felt thick, like fog that hadn't quite made up its mind to form. Every few seconds I thought I heard something under the hum of the sign, the faint pop of tires on gravel. When I went back inside, the store smelled even sweeter. Eddie had set a paper cup of coffee on the counter. "On the house," he said. I sipped it out of politeness. It tasted fine. A little off, maybe too sweet. "You been open long?" I asked. He smiled wider. "Since before the highway came through." I looked out the window. The road outside was empty, the horizon darker than it should have been. No headlights, no stars. "Funny thing," he added, still smiling. "You're the first car we've seen all night." I laughed awkwardly. "Guess I got lucky." Eddie nodded. "Guess so." I bought a bag of chips, thanked him, and started back to the car. As I reached the door, I heard him call after me, "Hey, you be careful. They're saying the weather's bad past Rosevale." I turned. "Where's that?" He pointed behind me. "That way." The problem was, behind me was east, the direction I'd come from. Outside, my tank read full, but the pump handle still hung from the nozzle, dripping clear liquid that wasn't gasoline. The ground beneath the puddle shimmered faintly red. When I looked up, the station lights flickered once, and for the first time, I noticed there weren't any bugs. Not one. No crickets, no moths, no sound. I got in the car and started the engine. The digital clock blinked midnight. The radio came alive with static. Then a voice, calm and cheerful. "Welcome back to Rosevale Gas. Been a while, huh?" When I glanced in the mirror, the attendant was standing beside my car, smiling, even though I hadn't seen him leave the counter. The highway should have taken me west, toward Denver. Instead, the road signs kept reading Rosevale, 2 miles. No matter how long I drove, that same green sign appeared again and again, glinting in my headlights. I checked the GPS. The blue dot spun once, twice, and vanished. No service. The radio kept playing faint static under the voice of an old country station. 1950s kind of stuff. The same song on repeat. "I'll see you again, my Rose." When I looked at the dashboard clock, it still read 12 and twack. I decided to turn around. The station came into view faster than it should have. 1 second, empty highway. The next, the red neon sign buzzing through the fog again. Rosevale Gas and Deli. Only now, the E in Rosevale was burnt out. I pulled in without thinking, headlights cutting through the same wet concrete. The puddles were still there, still glistening like red glass. The attendant, Eddie, stood in the same spot behind the counter. Same smile, same coffee cup waiting for me. "Rough night?" he asked. I stared at him. "I was just here. You remember me?" He tilted his head like a confused dog. "No, sir. Don't get many folks this late. Must have been someone else." My stomach dropped. The coffee was still steaming, fresh. I backed away slowly, scanning the shelves. Everything was identical. The same chips, same maps, even the same fly frozen mid-air above the candy rack. When I leaned close, I realized it wasn't a fly at all. It was a speck of ash, floating perfectly still. The hum of the sign outside grew louder, a low vibration in the walls. Eddie kept talking. Cheerful as ever. "Road's tricky tonight. Lot of people get turned around." "Turned around?" I repeated. He smiled wider. "Circle back to where they started. Happens every year." Something in his tone made me glance toward the window. My car wasn't outside anymore. Just the pumps, the red puddles, and darkness beyond. "You okay, friend?" he asked, still calm, still smiling. I nodded automatically, though my pulse was hammering. "What day is it?" He looked at the calendar nailed behind him. It was yellowed, edges curling. The month read November. Every date was crossed out, except the 29th. "That's today," he said, still smiling. "It's always today." The lights flickered. For the first time, Eddie blinked. The air shimmered between us, and for a heartbeat, I saw something under his skin, like flickering static through glass. "You should get back on the road," he said softly, "before it closes." "Before what closes?" "The road." He turned away, his smile stretching too wide now, splitting along invisible seams. His voice dropped an octave. "You don't want to be here when it resets." The humming became a roar. The lights above strobed red, white, red, white. The shelves started to tremble. Through the window, the neon sign flickered until only the letters ROSE remained lit. I ran for the door, nearly tripping on the threshold. The air outside was thick, syrupy, burning my throat with sweetness. When I reached the pumps, the ground beneath me felt soft, like walking on wet paper. The car was back, idling, door open, keys in the ignition. I jumped in and floored it. The moment my tires hit the asphalt, everything went silent. No lights, no sign, no station. Just darkness and the sound of my own breath. Then the radio clicked back on, and a voice, not mine, not Eddie's, whispered, "See you next year." When I finally saw another car's headlights ahead, I waved them down. But as they passed, I realized the driver was me, grinning through the windshield like I'd never left the station. I drove until dawn, or what felt like it. The sky never changed, stuck in that gray pre-morning that never fully arrives. The clock on my dash still said 12 squawk, but the fuel gauge had dropped back to half. Every few miles, the same sign appeared again. Rosevale Gas and Deli, next right. I ignored the turnoff. No more detours, I told myself. Just keep driving west. Then the road ended. No warning, no curve. Just a rusted guardrail and empty fields beyond. The highway map said there should have been another 30 miles before the next junction. I stopped, stepped out, and listened. The wind carried a faint hum, low and familiar. When I turned around, the station was there again. Closer this time. The red neon flickered weakly through the fog. The R buzzed once and went dark, leaving only Osavale gas glowing. I told myself it wasn't real, that fatigue and cold could make a person see anything. Then I heard the faint ding of the pump bell. Someone was fueling up. There was another car parked at the pump, older, maybe 70s, long rusted. The back seat was filled with boxes and a single duffel bag. The trunk was open. The driver stood by the pump. It was Eddie. He looked exactly the same. Vest, neat hair, polite smile. Only this time he wasn't behind a counter. "Forgot to top off," he said cheerfully. "Happens to everyone." I took a step back. "You need to let me go." He smiled wider. "You did. Been gone years now." The wind picked up, carrying that same syrupy sweetness. It made my eyes water. "What is this place?" Eddie set the pump back in its cradle. The click echoed far too long. Not a place, just a stop between places. The air around us shimmered, as if the world itself were made of old film catching light. I could see movement inside the building, silhouettes behind the glass. Travelers, dozens of them, all standing still, heads tilted, faces pale and blank. "Who are they?" I whispered. "Customers," Eddie said simply. "Everyone gets thirsty." He nodded toward the puddles at his feet, red, glossy, almost alive. When I looked closer, I saw they weren't reflections of the neon sign. They were reflections of the sky. Endless red horizon, lightning flickering beneath a ceiling of clouds. Eddie reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small keychain. A black plastic tag that read number 29. He tossed it to me. I caught it out of instinct. It was warm. "Your pump," he said. "You earned it." "I don't want it." "You already took it," he replied softly. Behind me, my car engine turned over on its own. The headlights flared, cutting through the fog, and for a moment I saw movement in the back seat. A shape leaning forward, smiling. My own face, pale and flickering like an image on bad film. Eddie tipped his cap. "We'll see you next year." The world rippled once, the sound of the neon stretching into a long electric whine. Then I was on the highway again. Bright daylight, clear sky. The gas station was gone. My tank read full. The dashboard clock blinked 12:01 p.m. For a moment, I thought I'd made it, that I'd driven through whatever nightmare that was. Then I noticed the receipt sticking out of the cup holder. Rosevale Gas and Deli, 11/29/2025. Pump number 29, 66. And in the rearview mirror, the station sign flashed faintly once more, far behind me yet still too close. They say that stretch of highway doesn't exist on any modern map. But every year, just before December begins, a handful of new credit charges appear. Same date, same amount, same name on the receipt. Eddie.